am not the victim, I am the system. I'm not in the wrong with my infinite wisdom. Follow my words even if I contradict them. Don't want another demon past the ones within my mind, and it's with that resolution that I'll kill you every time.
Hello, I'm Bencho, and this is Flash, a series where I give you my first impressions on games I've been playing. Today, that game is Sorry We're Closed. Sorry We're Closed is a top-down survival horror game where you play as Michelle, a convenience store clerk having trouble coping with a messy breakup, and with it, some unresolved trauma. And, in classic horror game style, instead of getting a therapist, we decide it's better if we get cursed by a demon to pierce the veil between their world and ours, and be sent on a series of errands by other supernatural beings, all in the name of love, or maybe lack thereof. I was first drawn to this game because their trailer song was a banger. It also had this target shooting combat mechanic that was a refreshing break from the standard mechanics of similar titles like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Crow County. And after playing it, while both the soundtrack and mechanics were solid and the story was quite enjoyable, there were some things missing. It felt there had been a series of creative decisions both in story and development that I wish were handled differently, and therefore I have quite a few opinions on it, which I'll get to shortly after a quick tangent. I wanted to thank you all for your comments on my reviews. I love seeing people bring their own viewpoints and opinions about the games I cover. One of my main goals on this channel is to get people to actively participate and engage more with the games they play. Even though some of the comments seem like they're written by means of some evolutionary miracle, like a single-cell organism somehow got its hands on an iPhone, I'm still very grateful for your willingness to participate in the conversation. I've noticed enough of you wish to see more in-depth and detailed reviews, and while I can't promise that for every game I cover because sometimes I simply don't have that much to say, I'm happy to report that you detail enjoyers will be eating good today. But I warn you, since I will be going more in depth, I will be entering spoiler territory. This will be your only warning. For now, let's open up with my thoughts on gameplay first, and I'll try my best to avoid major spoilers. Let's get to it. Let's start off with the target shooting mechanic I mentioned earlier, or as the game calls it, your third eye. I think it spices up an otherwise tepid gameplay loop. You have an ability that allows you to pierce the veil, revealing enemy weak points that once shot will destroy the target enemy. This ability, however, is relatively short range, so you risk taking damage from various enemies while you fire at them. You do have the option to play it in the classic Resident Evil style with an upgrade system that caters to whichever style you end up choosing. I will admit, I come from a place of bias when it comes to top-down tank control shooters like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. They generally aren't my cup of tea, but I am not immune to propaganda. I see a trailer with cool music and stylish visuals on a genre I would otherwise ignore, I pay attention. The implementation of the third eye vision allowing an alternative combat playstyle was exactly what I needed to play through the game. The level design was satisfactory. You're generally placed into abandoned buildings that, without your ability to see the supernatural, would just be derelict, empty establishments closed down through unexplainable circumstances. But as the player travels through them, they can uncover what really caused these locations to be shut down. Another problem I usually have with these style of games is their level design. They tend to be maze-like and confusing. You end up spending hours hunting for miscellaneous items to progress through the level, usually tied to a frustrating puzzle with a solution that rarely makes any logical sense. Luckily, the levels in Sorry We're Closed feel more streamlined. Though they follow the same tropes, the end result is far more digestible, although their presentation left something to be desired. These dungeon-like levels felt separate from the world you occupy. Most of the narrative of Sorry We're Closed happens in between these dungeons, in a hub world where all the NPCs reside. There was rarely a seamless transition between the two. The gameplay loop felt imbalanced because of it. I streamed this game on my Twitch channel, and I found myself reading dialogue boxes for an hour, then running a dungeon only to return to read dialogue boxes for another hour. For a world I would describe as highly eccentric, the transitions between these two sections seemed too rigid and formulaic. At some point I felt as though I should have been opening a level select menu and selecting the next mission with how cut and dry it was. With such a character-dense plot, I wish things were more seamless. It did improve in pacing once you were sufficiently locked in to the ending you were going to get, but this happens way too far into the game. I know this is a case-by-case basis with games. There very well could be a game out there I've experienced this in and had zero complaints, but this one seemed eager to set itself apart from other games within its genre, but fell short just enough to warrant a comment from me. I understand that this opinion is maybe a little overkill for something I imagine many would overlook, but One, it was a palpable enough feeling that I felt I would be remiss if not to point it out here. And two, I make review videos for YouTube, so I have very specific opinions. Sorry We're Closed soundtrack is very unique and sets itself apart from other games of its genre. More games need boss music with lyrics that relate to the fight. Original rap by the Akamura group was used for most of the boss fights, and it brought a unique energy to these otherwise macabre encounters. I haven't played many games with original rap in it, and I think it works great for the boss fights. My only issue is that the ambient music that plays for a majority of the game otherwise is pretty unassuming. I would have loved if the whole soundtrack was more cohesive, maybe more hip-hop inspired to fit well with the boss music. Because as it stands now, the game music is so ambient that when the boss fight happens, the contrast is jarring. There's also a few story moments where you're in a high tense situation and the music is either non-existent or just doesn't match the mood. The character design is phenomenal, although most of the less reputable people in my comments would most likely be mortified at the idea of the game's unique and expressive character designs. I believe it was a nice change of pace from the standard Resident Evil style horror games I've experienced in the past. I admit, I had my reservations in the beginning with each character I met exuding such main character energy. I was worried that the story was going to spread itself too thin, giving each of these individuals equal screen time and presence, but overall diluting the importance of the player's story arc. But I'm happy to report that everyone eventually falls into place narratively, and the story follows a comprehensive path that works well with a diverse and energetic cast. As for the story, the writing is great. Each character feels unique and ties together well within the world that is built as you play, but the story arc suffers from its use of multiple endings and player-driven character choices. There's this frustration of mine with games that have multiple endings. I believe most of the time a game's story is compromised for the sake of player agency. This game is no different. Throughout the game, you make a handful of choices that affect the final ending of the game. But because of this, you close doors to other stories, and in one case in particular, you completely cut a character out of the game. And ultimately, I found that after beating the game, the ending I got was lackluster and a little disappointing. I felt as though I was punished for making wrong decisions. Generally, that's how I feel with most games that offer multiple endings, except for the rare exception. This game had such a strong cast, and I felt it had equally strong messages about love, change, and fear that they could have very easily made a singular story arc that would draw me in more and endear me with the characters better. It even felt that Michelle, the character you play as, had a personality of her own, independent from the players. That the decision portion of the game felt like I was making those decisions for someone else against their will. This feeling of intrusion was further exacerbated by the strong, specific philosophies of love that each character seems to hold. To give some context to this, let me briefly explain the story. The player character, Michelle, has been struggling to get over a breakup that happened 2 years ago. Stuck in a slump that her friends can't get her out of has caused her life to stagnate. Then, seemingly out of the blue, she's visited by a demon, the Duchess, in her sleep, who curses her with the ability to see the realm of the supernatural, and the promise that the curse will inevitably consume her, stating that they'll free Michelle from the curse if she confesses her love to the Duchess. With our newfound insight, you learn that your closest friend, Robin, is also a demon, and most, if not all the people in your neighborhood have a connection to the realm of the supernatural. And much like the Duchess, they all share a deep longing and desire for love. Love is the core to Sorry We're Closed story. Your friend Robin, along with the Duchess and others, are all wanting love. Love that the natural order has deemed forbidden. In a time before time, demons and angels were all part of the same domain, until an event called the Great Divide separated them into their respective domains of order and chaos, heaven and hell, etc. Though before this divide, there were those who had close romantic relationships with each other that were separated into their different domains, and now they can't be together without consequences. One being that demons and angels, when they touch, experience excruciating pain, and neither can exist for long in each other's realms. Michelle is in a unique position of being a human with the ability to navigate these realms with little consequence. So naturally, Robin, along with the Duchess and other third parties, wish to take advantage of this and to get what they want. This is where you make a bulk of your decisions, figuring out who you wish to help, the Duchess, Robin, or yourself. So to bring it back to why I think this freedom of choice causes problems for me, is that every single character's view of love is so extreme. They all seem to believe that unbelievable, excruciating pain is mandatory for love. And while I don't blame them, for demons demons and angels, it quite literally is. From the perspective of Michelle the human, everything they say and do is just so extreme. Extremely dangerous, extremely selfish, and honestly, extremely unrealistic. And at no point was there a touchstone for me to latch onto. For the whole game, I was constantly being told by supernatural beings that in order to find love, I have to literally disembowel myself and be in near constant pain. The Duchess themselves say it multiple times that they repeatedly mutilate their suitors to show their love. And so when I'm given options to express my opinion on the whole situation, I tend to opt for the choices that kept me as far away as possible from being bisected by a chainsaw. And I know you could argue, well, that was your choice as a player. You made your decisions and got the results that stem from that. And while you're correct, as mentioned earlier, Michelle also was written in a very specific way. And my decisions were only ever worded in maybe 1 or 2 words. So more often than not, I would make my choice and Michelle would say something wildly different than I was imagining.
We're glad you're okay, but what the hell happened? I broke a cycle of pain. It's clear that angels and demons shouldn't mix. Oh, wait. Wait. That's... Oh, I hate vague dialogue choices in a video game.
I'm not saying that the writing was poor. I still very much enjoyed the dialogue, but my interaction felt so forced. My agency felt fabricated. I would have been more interested in learning more about Michelle's story through playing the game, not suddenly injecting my viewpoints in what felt like was already a fleshed out individual. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Sorry We're Closed, despite my complaints, but I know it could have been better. I give Sorry We're Closed a C+, a unique, specifically crafted game that stands out above other indie games of similar genre, but falls short right before the finish line. In so many aspects, I was left feeling as though I didn't have a complete and satisfying experience. It's still worth your time and money, and my criticisms are so granular and specific that I guarantee you will have more than likely have a very good time playing this game yourself, unless you're as annoying as I am. That's gonna do it for me, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.